Veterans of the Korean War were escorted into the Washington County Fairgrounds building with a bagpipe procession. For many, it was the first time they'd been honored for their service in the military during a war that's been labeled forgotten.
In July of 1953, the shooting stopped and the troops returned home. There were precious few parades or elaborate homecomings. Simply, it was back to business. Let's change that. Let's make it so they are never forgotten.
The Korean War was the first time the United States military engaged in conflict after the end of World War II. In June of 1950, the American military, along with other UN troops, supported South Korea to combat a communism takeover by North Korea. With indirect support from Communist China and the Soviet Union in 1950, troops rolled across the 38th parallel at the border, besieging the country.
We continued on, making the landing at Incheon, which is quite an experience. But then later on in October, we boarded the ship and went up to Wonsan, North Korea, on our way to the Chosin Reservoir. And by this time, the temperatures were dipping below zero.
There's some scenes that I don't like to talk about, especially when we did a lot of bombardment and knowing how many people were killed from that incident.
So we started out, we walked up to the front in the snow, 40 below. We didn't have the proper equipment, cold equipment, you know, but we made it.
In many cases, it came down to the grit, resilience, and determination of the many soldiers, sailors, Marines, and pilots to win the day.
Washington County Commissioners made a special proclamation declaring April 15, 2021, Korean War Veterans Day in Washington County.
And paid a tremendous price with more than 36,000 dead, 103,000 wounded, and 4,700 prisoners of war. And whereas these brave veterans, now in their 80s and 90s, risked their lives in a police action that was never formally declared a war.
I am a beneficiary of your bravery and the peace that you brought. I just want to thank you so much for that.
Each veteran was personally handed the declaration and given a generous handshake and thank you for their service.
It was great, and it's hard to believe at my age that they still recognize, you know, us veterans like that.
To get together, you know, with other ones, you'd have a camaraderie, you know, so, and that's what I liked about it, so, and to see all the guys, and just to find out that there's just two of us that was on the Chosin Reservoir.
It was very fine, very nice to have something said about that forgotten war. We watch MASH all the time, so we kind of remember what it's about.
You feel like you don't deserve it. You really do, I do. You just don't deserve it.
Why?
I don't know.
A wall honoring our heroes of those veterans who served in the military from this area is on display for all to see at the fair.
We really appreciate everybody putting this on and honoring the veterans in this country. In a crazy mixed up world we live in today, the veterans need all the credit they can get for making this country what it is. So.
In Washington County, Melissa Anderson, Community Education News.